So welcome to the class. Um, Today is mostly going to be just an overview of the course and what I'm sort of expecting of you, what some of my assumptions are about what you can do, what you've learned coming into this point, coming into this class. So we'll talk about some of that. And then when we get near the end, we'll open up R and we'll do our first little bit of messing around with stuff. Okay. So this is basically the agenda for today, getting on the same page with all of us. That includes introductions, because like I said, I know most of you, but not all of you. We'll go over the entire syllabus, or most of the syllabus anyway, and then we'll do a little bit of R at the end, okay? So who am I? I'm Daniel. I'm a research assistant professor at Behavioral Research and Teaching, which is a research center here at the University of Oregon, although I say here, but I'm in my home. So I am a dad of two daughters. They're right here. This is McKinley. She's 6. And this is Malia back here. She's 8. And this is my wife back there. She's my age. My pronouns are he, him, his. And my primary areas of interest are R and computational research in the social sciences generally, obviously related to education and things that happen in education. In the last couple of years in particular, I've become very interested in systemic inequities between institutions. So why do we have big inequities in some schools and not as big of inequities in other schools? That sort of things. Okay, so who is you? That's who I am, basically. This is Hood in the background, too. You will see him a lot throughout class. Sometimes he is totally crazy, and sometimes he's just sleeping. So I'm going to go around. I'll just call out your name if I mispronounce your name, or you would like to go by a different name than what I see on the screen or whatever. Please do correct me, okay? I don't want to be mispronouncing your name all term long. So please introduce yourself. Give me a little bit of background about you. Why are you here? I know you probably took HLM1, and so that's why you're here. But give me a little more than that. What is it that makes you want to learn more about multi-level modeling? What pronouns would you like us to use for you for this class? And what is one fun thing you did recently that's not related to academic work? So that's something I didn't cover. So I'll say quickly, some of you are in my other class, so you've heard this already, but I'll say it anyway. We just got back, my family and I did, from the Redwoods. So we were only there for 2 nights. So we left on Friday, spent Friday night and Saturday night, and then came back on Sunday. But it was great fun. Saw lots of big trees, and one in particular that was out on a just path sort of out in the middle of nowhere, and came across a tree next to a little stream that was the biggest tree I've ever seen in my life. It was incredible. So that was really fun. And then the last thing, do you have a furry friend that you want to introduce? So I introduced Hood. He's probably the only one you'll see. We also have a dog, but she's not usually in here with me. So yeah, that's it. All right, I think that's everyone. Did I miss anybody? Okay, sometimes the screens jump around a little bit, but I thought I got everybody. So thank you all for taking the time to do that. I know it's a pretty significant amount of class time to have everybody introduce themselves, but I think it's worth it, especially when we're doing Zoom, because it's really hard for me as a teacher to connect with you all through Zoom in the same. I mean, it's impossible basically to connect with you all through Zoom in the same way that I would if we were in person, right? But that's also super important to me. So I'm so I appreciate you all taking the time to tell me a little bit about yourself and why you're here. And hopefully, as we go throughout the term, that will just grow, right? Along those lines, I know it can be a little bit uncomfortable, especially on Zoom, to sort of unmute yourself and interrupt me and ask a question or whatever. Um, but I'd just like to ask that you please try your best to actually do that, to just, unmute and interrupt if you have a question and not just sit there in silence, because that's really easy to do. But everybody will benefit from you asking questions. And again, I know it's a hard thing to do. If I were a student in your situation, it would be hard for me to do, but I'm just asking that you please try to do that as much as possible, okay? Because the other thing that is I have found hard about remote instruction, I wasn't planning on going into this all of a sudden here, but I am. So, um, is uh, just the sort of formative feedback, right? If we're in class, I can sometimes look and just see expressions on people's faces, and I know I need to slow down or I need to speed up or whatever. That's a lot harder through Zoom. And then the other thing is, the classes I teach tend to be a lot of doing, right? Mostly through R. And in the classroom, I can walk around and see people's screens and I can kind of see if you're following along or not, um, or if you're just totally lost. And then sometimes I can be like, oh, okay, we need to revisit this. That's again much harder through Zoom. So I can't know a lot of the time if you're following behind or if you're just like, oh my gosh, we got it. Can we move on? It's a lot harder through Zoom. So if you can please just, give me that feedback verbally as much as possible, that will help all of us. Okay. All right. So a few class policies. If you have had classes with me in the past, which many of you have, this will all seem a little bit redundant. Well, it's just stuff you've seen before, but I think it's worth going over, so we're going to do it again anyway. So the first policy is be kind, um, be understanding, and have patience both with yourself and with others. And the with yourself part is important because, again, like this stuff that we're learning in this class is hard, and it's stuff I'm still actively learning. There's many concepts we will talk about that I am still actively learning, and I will be actively learning forever, basically, right? Um, I mean, obviously, there's specific topics that you kind of get it and then you go on, but like you can keep, you know, learning more and more about this stuff forever. So if you aren't getting something and other people are, and you're feeling yourself like behind everybody else, just be patient with yourself. All right. That's a hard thing to do also, but it's really, really important. And try to not get discouraged and just, keep going. Um, Help others whenever possible. And in just basically those are the main policies, right? And I'm putting these specifically out there as policies, not just like let's try to do these things, because I really do think it's important for us to have a safe working environment, that we all try to adhere to these things. Okay. Um, Normally, I would also have policies about welcoming kids into class, but because we're virtual, right? That's both easier and it's harder. If you have kids at home with you, as I do, there might be times when you just need to turn off your screen and leave, and that's totally fine. Like that's expected. I have no problems with that whatsoever. So it's easier in that regard that, you can just kind of go and deal with what you need to deal with. But it's also harder because you're trying to go to school and you have kids at home potentially, right? If you happen to be like me. And so then that's really hard, right? So basically, what I'm trying to communicate here is whatever you need to do, that's fine. And if there is something that I can do to help make attending class easier for you, let me know. Okay. One thing that I will always do is record all the lectures, right? This one is being recorded right now. They will always be recorded, and then I will end up putting them on YouTube after I crop everybody out. So your face will never be on there, but just the slides will be, okay? And then I'll put a link to it on the website, which we'll get to here in just a second. Also, if you need to just not attend class for any reason, this is not specifically related to kids, it's related to anything, that's totally fine. Just please let me know, all right, if you can. But like this, that's the ideal, right? We're in a totally weird time. Hopefully we're coming out of it soon, but if you can, please let me know before class. If you can't and you just have to not attend class that day because something crazy came up, then that's fine, right? Then do what you need to do. Like basically, the main thing through all of this, the policies in this part, is you and your life matter a whole lot more than the content of this class, right? I hope that you will get something out of this class in terms of the content, but that truly is secondary to you in your life, right? So do what you need to do to keep yourself healthy mentally and physically, and to care for those that you love, and keep that as your priority, and the class can be secondary. All right. And then as much as possible, please let me know and we can make accommodations for you if we need to, or we can, do whatever we need to do to make sure that you're still keeping up on the content. So that's this part. I am here for you. I'm more than happy to make accommodations if we need to. We can meet outside of class. We can just set up hour-long meetings to go over things that you might have missed in class, whatever. This course is quite difficult, and it, depending on your comfort level with R and with multi-level modeling, it might be super difficult, or it might be just kind of okay, fine, but the main thing is don't do it alone, right? Don't suffer in silence. If you are struggling, please let me know, and we can work together to not make it something that is overly burdensome, okay? All right, any questions on any of that before I move on to the syllabus? Okay, here we go. So first thing I want to mention is we do have a course website. I'm going to actually go there now. This is the website. I think it's pretty well organized, but basically this is the landing page, and then we have a schedule. These are all links to the books if they have links. They don't all have links. And then we have each week here, okay? In the schedule part for the weeks, you'll have a link to the slides, which are here, okay? And then you'll have any assignment that is assigned, and you'll have it linked there as well. Any assignment that's due, and then links to the readings. And then the last thing is, as I mentioned, once class is over, I'll process this video, so I'll crop it down to be just the slides, and then I will post a link on YouTube. Okay, so right now I do have a link on there, so you'll have this little icon will show up as those links show up. Okay, I have a link up there that's on joins. I just basically wanted to put a link up there, but if you want links to like some of the other classes I've taught, if there's things like with R that you would like more information on or whatever, let me know and I can get you those playlists as well. Okay.
I
Then
have
we
a
have,
question.
yep.
Sorry, I have a question about reading in the schedule page.
Mhm.
I tried to access some of the readings and it says for page not found.
Okay. So I might have to fix the links. So yeah, I'll talk about this more in just a second, but basically the required readings should all be either provided to you through Canvas or free and open source books, okay? There will be some suggested readings too, mostly this book, that there is no open source version of. All right, this one, the Gelman and Hill one, technically there is no open source version of that, but I will tell you, if you want to look around for it, you can find it, okay? I have posted the chapters that are required to Canvas, so you can access them there. What I tried to do is have these linked to the Canvas page and download that way. If that doesn't work, I can try fixing the links, But if that doesn't work, you should be able to access them through Canvas.
Daniel, in the first week reading, first link isn't working. The second one was working. Yeah, that one wasn't working.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yep. So he might have. Oh no, I just messed this up. The link is in there twice. It looks like. So there it is. So if we just go back here, if you go to here, mixed models with R, that's it. And then I think it was just the introduction or maybe mixed models, something like that. Okay. So I'll go and look again, but that's the book. Does that make
I don't know if it's only me, but I can open it correctly. I think the link is currently right. I can open it.
Oh, you can open it.
Yeah,
well,
I
this
can.
one or this one? Because this one works. But I don't...
The first mixed models with bar.
Yeah, this one. Yeah, that one doesn't work for me.
Not this, the first one.
This one, yeah.
Yeah, this one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this is a link to the entire book. This was supposed to be a link to the specific chapter, but I think I just put the wrong thing in there. So actually, let me go here, and I should be a little bit. Okay, so it was the random intercepts one. So if we go back here, let's see. Let me look here. Yeah, okay. So this mixed models chapter, this is what I was asking you to read. Okay, so you can review that. Okay. Other questions, comments there? Okay. So then we also have the assignments page. Like I said, when there's an assignment that's assigned, it will be linked directly to the assignment. So you have homework 1 here. Homework 1 is actually already up, so you can click on that and you can go there. But you also have the assignments page, which is here. This has all the assignments. And then this one is linked, which is the first one, right? So that's going to take you to the same place. We have the overall syllabus here, which we will talk about more here in just a second. And then tags, which is just sort of an organizational structure. So you have assignments and homework. There's only one assignment posted currently, which is that first homework. So those both are going to go basically to the same thing. And then from there, you could go to homework 1. And then the last part is this class repo. If you are not at all familiar with GitHub, then this might be a little bit difficult. You could work with other people who are familiar. I know there are many in this class that are. Or you could just say, I'm not going to do this. But all of the material will always be posted on the GitHub repo. Okay, so the easiest way to do this, if you're comfortable with Git, is to clone this repo and then just pull from that repo as I update materials. Okay, if that sounds totally foreign and weird, you can either work with other people. So there are a number of people who have taken the data science classes and they should all be able to help you. Or you can talk to me if you really want to do that, or you can just say, nah, I'm not going to do that. All right. I will also try to post stuff on Canvas as much as possible, but the repo will always be the most up to date. So if there's discrepancies between the repo and Canvas, the repo is going to be more accurate. Okay. Along those same lines, the website publishes from the repo. Okay. So again, if there's a discrepancy between the website and Canvas, the website is much more likely to be correct. All right. So we're going to use Canvas for grading, and I'll use it for a little bit of distributing materials, but mostly it's going to be through the website. Okay. And also through the repo if you can do that. But like, for example, we have this data folder there, right? I'm going to try to keep refreshing the data folder on Canvas also to make sure it's the same as this one. But this is the one that will for sure be the most accurate because all the homeworks and all of the everything that I use, I'll be pulling directly from that folder as I create them. Okay.
I have a question.
Yep.
Are you posting slides as well on the repo?
Yes, the slides are, well, the slides are through the website. It's probably easier to get them that way. So if we go here, go to schedule, right, the slides are posted there. They are in the repository too. I can show you where they're at. So you go to static and then slides, and then they are there, week 1, part 1. There's only one part because we're once a week, but whatever, that's my convention. So there's the RMD file, there's the HTML, and there's the PDF. But the other thing is, for all of the slides, so if you just go to the website and click on the slides here, right? So as soon as I do that, let me just do it here. It'll take you to the slides, and then when you go over to the next slide, you'll have these links in the footer. So this will download a PDF of the slides. This is just a link to the actual slides online, and this is a link to the website, and this is a link to the GitHub repo. Okay, so if you, again, like if you don't want to download or clone the repo or whatever, you can for sure just access the slides through the website and then just click this button to download a PDF of the slides if you want. Okay. Other questions on any of that? Okay, so this is the link to the website. This is the link to the repo. I also have posted the website link on Canvas in the syllabus page, so you can access it there as well. So this is basically reiterating what I just said. Nearly everything is going to be distributed through the website and or the repo. If you haven't already, I would suggest going to the website. Okay, so it is mlm2-2021.netlify.app. Okay, so go ahead and go there now if you haven't, and grab the slides at least. Again, if you feel comfortable, go ahead and clone the repo, and then you can just pull. You'll get the new materials as I update them. And then we'll use Canvas for grading. I'll also use it for announcements. So please make sure your notifications are turned on so you get announcements. And I'll post a few things there too, but mostly it's going to be pretty bare bones. Okay. So the slides are always available through the website, and you can also just click this button to download a PDF of them. So whether you want them in HTML or PDF, should be fine either way. Okay, questions on any of that?
Daniel, will you give us some guidance on how to clone the repo or pull data from there? Or is that something that we should kind of connect with others to see if we can get some help with that?
Yeah, so I'll say it very quickly, but then you probably will need to connect with somebody else. So if you feel comfortable with Git, can you put a thumbs up emoji on your screen right now just so everybody can see? So one of these people, if you don't feel comfortable with Git, maybe connect with one of these people, okay? But what's going to happen is you need to first download Git onto your computer, which you would do through terminal. It's not too difficult. And then from there, you would just basically say git clone, and then you would, so let me go there again. So if I go to the repo, you would say git clone, and then you would just copy this link right here. And that would download a folder onto your computer that has everything on the repo. And then basically once a week, probably right before class, you would just type git pull, and it would just pull the most recent changes. I tend to teach it now and use a lot Git Kraken, which is like a graphic user interface for Git. So you can choose to do that if you want. In this case, the amount of code that you'd be writing is so little that it's probably not worth it. All you would be doing is that git clone initially, and then git pull after that. Okay.
Hey, Daniel, can I share some not good practice that I have used to get around Git before?
Sure.
The first time I took one of your classes, I did not try to get involved in all of that. And I would just open the link and then copy the code and put it in my R Markdown. You might hate that I'm sharing this and it's like such bad practice, we shouldn't do it. But if you don't want to learn Git and stuff, you could just go in the folder, find any of his scripts, copy it, paste it into your own R document, and then not have to be like scared of learning another thing at the same time, because I was the first time I was using Git.
Yeah, I think that's totally fine, actually. I have no problem with that at all. So if we go into scripts, for example, there's this data script and there's a drop intercept script. This is the code, right? And so you could just copy whatever. This is not code that I think anybody needs to actually look at. It was just code that I used to create some of the data that we're using in class. So you could copy that. The other thing is, though, if you go to the slides, like here, you'll see these RMD files, right? So this is the code that I used to create the slides that we're looking at today. And so most of this is not actually code until we get down to the bottom. But like here, right, you could just copy that. But I've also changed the slides so that they have a little button that you can copy code directly from the slides. So you could do that too. But like for the homework, I don't know how, let's go look real quick. I don't think there's really actually, so the homework and things like that would be in content post. Here's homework. So it's this index.md, and you could look at the raw version. Oh, that's the wrong thing. I have to go into homework 1 first. Index.markdown. Yeah, so it looks like this. So I don't know how useful that really is. Look at the raw version. But you could try. Here's my cat. Okay. Any other questions, comments on any of that? Okay. So moving on to a tiny bit of content. It's actually more just like housekeeping stuff. But this class is, I would refer to it as multi-level modeling. All right. It is a method by many names. There are 3 primary names that are used: hierarchical linear modeling, which is what the course is called, of course, multi-level modeling, and mixed effects modeling. Okay. Then there's a bunch of similar variants like hierarchical linear regression and mixed effects regression, which is basically the same as mixed effects modeling, but slightly different, right? So there's a bunch of different ways that people will refer to this method that we're talking about and use different language to describe the model. I will use multi-level modeling. I don't like the term hierarchical linear modeling. I think it's confusing because there's also hierarchical regression, which is a completely different thing than HLM. I think the word hierarchical is a little bit hard to say too. So I'm not going to use that term generally throughout the class. That's also why the website is MLM2 rather than HLM2. Okay, so just throughout, right? That is what I will do. It does sound fancy. That's true. So instead, I'll use the term multi-level modeling. It keeps it distinct from hierarchical regression, which I would actually not use that term for that modeling either. I would probably use sequential regression. And I probably wouldn't even use that approach anyway. It does provide a useful heuristic, I think, the term multi-level modeling, because it makes you think of things multi-level, which I suppose hierarchical does too, but not quite as much. But like all heuristics, right, it also can be a bit limiting. And we'll talk about this more later, but yeah, multi-level structures is a good way to think of things, but that's not the only way that you can use multi-level modeling either. All right. So course learning objectives, there's a lot of them, okay? And I have a caveat after this, but the main learning objectives, oh my God, it's going crazy. The main learning objectives are to fit and interpret multi-level models in R using both frequentist and Bayesian approaches, okay? Fit and interpret multi-level logistic regression models, visualize the fitted model predictions. Not at all distracting, is it? Understand the assumptions of multi-level models. So some of this stuff you probably already have some of, right? So you probably talked about the assumptions of multi-level models before, but we're going to talk about this in more depth, And we're specifically going to have you actually simulate new data, assuming it was generated from a multi-level model structure, okay? Understand various variance covariance specifications of the random effects and how this can relate to overfitting. And then understand, be able to translate equations between Raudenbush and Breich, which you used last term, and Gelman and Hill, which is primarily what I will use, okay? That is probably, for some of you, will make you want to vomit thinking about the idea of, you know, using another new notation for the same thing. And I understand that for sure. But I do think that the Gelman and Hill notation is better. And specifically, I think it makes the assumptions of the model more clear. Okay, so that is my preference. And so we're going to talk about Raudenbush and Breich because I know that's what you used before. But I want to at least introduce you to the Gelman and Hill notation so you understand how the same model can be communicated different ways. Okay, all right. And then be able to model growth flexibly. I will probably have a lot of examples using growth models. In fact, I know I will because I already have quite a few examples of that. That's primarily because that's where I work with HLM or MLM the most, is with growth modeling. So I sort of just have to apologize about, like, you know, occasionally the examples might seem a little bit redundant in terms of like what they are. I will try as we go along to have more types of examples and things, but as many of you probably know, if you've ever taught a class, like searching for good data sets for examples takes forever. It just takes forever. And it's really frustrating because you think you got a good data set and then you start to use it, you do all this work, and then it doesn't end up illustrating the thing that you thought it did, or the model won't converge or whatever. So I will try my best to switch up those things, but there will probably be quite a few examples around growth modeling just because that's sort of my most frequent application. Okay. You would never know it, but that cat is like 11 years old too. He's not a young cat. All right. So a bit of a caveat about the previous two slides with the course learning objectives, right? That's a lot of learning objectives. It's a lot of things to try to cover in one course. And so we're probably not going to cover them all in super depth. They're like sort of the things I want to cover throughout the term. But part of this is like more exposure, right? Getting you to think about these things maybe a little bit in more depth at one specific time, but it may not be something that you end up spending a ton of time with. Other things that I may lecture on just a little bit might end up being something that you think about a lot and that you end up working with a lot, okay? And I hope that the objectives line up with your interests that way. But there won't be equal time devoted to each of those learning objectives, okay? Just sort of by the nature of this class and the amount of time we have, because it's just a lot, right? But this is an advanced class. You will have a final project, which I'll get to here in just a minute. And my hope is that you will use that final project to dive deeper into specific topics that you're more interested in, okay? That makes sense? So we're gonna cover all of that stuff, but some of them will cover a lot, others we won't cover very much. And then you can kind of pick and choose what you want to dive into more through your final project, mostly. Okay, I'll also try to, as much as possible, if I can remember. I usually can, but these are all brand new slides I'm creating this term. I'll try to provide weekly learning objectives as well, okay? So that provides you a frame for what you should be sort of focusing on for that specific week, okay? This week, that's pretty simple, okay? It's understand the requirements of the course, understand the requirements of the final project, and then by the end of today, hopefully be ready to go with R and understand the basics of fitting a multi-level model, okay? Super basics. We're gonna fit an unconditional model, and that's it. Okay, textbooks. As I mentioned, I'm only going to require readings from textbooks that you can access for free, but there's other readings that I might suggest to you, depending on what your interests are and things that might not be free. This world of multi-level modeling is a little bit different than the world I work in most often, which is more open source stuff, in that there's not as much open source stuff, right? There is some open source textbooks, and that's one of the textbooks we'll use. I think it's really good, but there's just not as much stuff that's open source. So I'll try my best to get you access to anything that you need without making you buy a book. But I do think that applied longitudinal data analysis book, if you're doing more longitudinal stuff, is probably worth the investment because it's a great book. So here's the Mixed Models with R book by Michael Clark. He is quite good just generally. He does all sorts of different tutorials and things on, GAMs and all sorts of stuff. But this is his book on mixed models, which I think is quite good. Gelman and Hill, they actually do have a new book that's out. I have that one as well. It is good also, but this one is still, I sort of like this one more. And partly it's because that book, well, so this one covers multi-level modeling, the new one doesn't. They have a second book that they're going to be releasing soon that does cover multi-level modeling. But this one also covers both frequentist and Bayesian approaches, although some of the stuff in this book is a little bit old at this point for the software implementations of it. But their newer books are only Bayesian. So I would like to talk about both versions. Other books also free. So this book is related to Git by Jenny Bryan. There's a link right there. That one is specifically Git for R users. And then R for data science. So if you're at all uncomfortable with any of the R stuff we're doing, that's a good one. And then one more, this is the one I mentioned. It's not free, but if you're doing longitudinal data analysis in particular, I do think it is worth the investment. It's one of the best books I've found on longitudinal data analysis. Okay, so assignments, 100 points total, okay? Throughout the whole term, there's 100 points in assignments. So it makes, your percentage really easy because 1 point is 1%, obviously. So each week, as we go through the lecture, I'll ask you to follow along for specific parts of the slides. You might also have just notes that you've been taking during class, whatever. When we are done with the class, I'm asking that you just turn in your script that you used for that day, okay? Those will be scored at 1 point each. This is expected whether you're attending live or whether you have to miss class and you're going to watch the lecture later, okay? Because I am going to have them all recorded. So unless there's, some extenuating circumstances, in which case just talk to me and we can, I can waive it for you for a week or whatever. But generally, I'm going to expect you to just turn in your notes and your sort of things that you're using to follow along during class. So those are 1 point each week, so 10 points for the term. For the homework, we're going to have 3 homework assignments throughout the term and then a final project. That's basically it, okay? These are going to be scored at 15 points each. You are free to work on them alone or in groups of, 2 to 5-ish people, okay? It's totally up to you. I'm fine with whatever. Please do use R Markdown for them, okay? And these are the 3 assignments, okay? So as I mentioned, the first homework is already posted. You are free to start working on it now if you feel comfortable with it. We have not talked about how to do any of it yet, but if you feel comfortable and you feel like you're ready to go, then go for it, okay? That's completely fine. That's why I post it as early as I can. So I'm hoping to post this second one soonish, next week. Okay, that's my goal. I don't know that that'll happen, but that's my goal. So basic multi-level modeling with R, then we'll talk about growth models and variance covariance matrices. And so this will probably include like different variance covariance matrices for sure, but also like polynomial regression type things. And then Bayesian estimation and multi-level logistic regression is the last homework. Okay. Final project, 45 points. One other part of this, I thought I had this in the slides, but apparently I don't. When you're working with R Markdown, please be careful about what your homework ends up looking like. Okay, so you're gonna do the stuff, right? And then you're gonna click knit and it's gonna render it to HTML. Please, when you hand it in, just hand in the RMD and the HTML, okay? Because that way I can make sure I see all your code. Generally, I'll just look at the HTML. I won't look at the RMD, but if there's something weird that I'm not understanding, then I will go to the RMD and that'll help me fully diagnose it, okay? So hand in both the RMD and the HTML. And then the other thing is, like, be careful with the HTML that you're not like printing a giant data frame to your screen and it's like going on forever, right? Like, so I have to scroll to get to the actual relevant output, okay? Homeworks, I will, score based on whatever, but I won't, they'll mostly be completion based, okay? And part of this is because I am teaching 2 classes this term. This one I've never taught before, so it's a ton of work. And although we will go over the homeworks in class, I may not be able to give you the amount of feedback I would ideally like to give you normally, just because of time. I'm worried about this term for me. So yeah, that's my notes on that. Questions on that at all? Okay, for the final project, it is 45 points technically, and it has 3 parts. The first is a proposal worth 5 points, and that is due on the 30th. So basically, I'll cover this in a second, but basically what's the data that you're going to use, etc. Then your final project product will be 2 parts. One is an R script, which I'll look through and score at 20 points, and the other is a write-up, which I'll look through and score at 20 points, okay? So the proposal has these 4 components: the data source identified, which must be shareable with me. So it doesn't have to be completely publicly available, but you do need to be able to share the data with me so I can run the code that you have written, okay? Have your research questions identified, no more than 3, because this needs to be really manageable to do, okay? A description of any data processing that needs to occur before you fit the model that you're expecting to fit, and then sort of just your current status with the project, what challenges you're facing, what steps still need to occur, feasibility of finishing on time, etc. Okay. Then for the actual final project, which is 40 points, right? 20 for the script, 20 for the write-up. You can see the assignments page for full details on this, but basically it's scored like this, okay? I'm gonna run through your script. I will run it line by line, and I'm gonna expect that I will get the same results that you are talking about in your write-up. If I get different results, then you'll lose points there, okay? It's only 2 points, but that's 2% of your grade, right? Exploratory and descriptive analysis, so I'm expecting that you will do some of that before you get to the actual modeling, so that's 3 points. 10 points for the actual analysis. Specifically, the analysis should map to the research question directly, and that, I think we all probably know this, but quantitative research is not any more objective than any other type of research, because there's 18 bazillion decisions that you have to make along the way. So your decisions should be clear and they should be justified from the evidence. Okay, those are like the main things that I'll be looking at for the analysis part. And obviously that there's no like errors, that you didn't do something totally wrong. plots, there has to be at least one plot from your model, okay, that communicates the coefficients, the model predictions, or some other sort of features of the model, okay? So that's how your script is going to be scored. The write-up is going to be tough just in terms of length, okay? It needs to be really, really quick, okay? 5 pages max, that's what I'm saying, okay? So you'll have a very brief introduction, like maybe a paragraph. Research questions, that's probably going to conclude your introduction, right? 2 points. Your method, which is maybe 1 to 2 pages. Your results, 1 to 2 pages. Discussion, probably more like a paragraph. And then just general style. So if there's like a lot of errors, typos, things like that, then I'll take away points there. But for most cases, that's essentially just free points, right? But all of this needs to be covered within 5 pages. So if you go over 5 pages, then I will take off points, and there's no cheating on that, right? So double spaced, standard margins, standard font size, etc. Right? Not double-sided or anything like that. Okay. And if you go to the assignments page, you will see more details on that. That's basically it. Are there questions on that? Okay.
Daniel, I have a question.
Yep.
I'm thinking for the project that I might be able to use some student level data that isn't shareable. I can't share the data set with you. Are there alternatives to kind of like meet that requirement for making it reproducible for you?
So we can talk about this more maybe outside of class, but I really need to be able to run the code. That's the main thing I'm worried about. So there's a package called SynthPop, which allows you to create synthetic data from existing data. You could try something like that. The problem is with multi-level data structures is that it often becomes unwieldy. And so you have, depending on how large your data are, it may not work. If it's fairly small, it might work. So there might be some options that way where you could basically create a synthetic data set, write all the code and use the synthetic data set for the purpose of this project. But then once you're done, you could just swap out the data set and the code should still just run for your real data, right? Okay. So that would be kind of ideal. If
you could.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if one option too is there's I don't remember what package it's from, but just adding jitter and then doing it just transformation and dropping IDs. I'm not sure if that will be sufficient and be just enough that it would still maintain that multi-level structure.
Yeah, so you could potentially, like, what's that called? It's like data masking or something like that, where you're basically, messing with the data a little bit so that it's still the same data basically, but it's not real scores. So there might be options like that, and if we can do something like that, that would be ideal. If not, I think we might just have to have you go with a different data set because I really need to run that code.
Okay, that's good to know now.
Yeah, okay, great. Any other questions? Okay, so yeah, Manuel, if you, do you go by Manuel Vasquez, or is it just Manuel?
Just Manuel. My last name just is a little long, I guess. Why don't you maybe explore some of those options and then maybe contact me, and if you're having difficulties, if I can't access the data that you're working with to try to anonymize it though, then it might be hard for me to help you, and then we can explore some options and try to figure something out. Okay, that's good.
Great. Any other questions, comments? And Chris, if you remember the name of that package, maybe you could put it in the chat or something. That would be helpful.
Yeah, I'll look it up.
Okay, grading. So 100 points total. Participation is 10 points, so that's 10%. 3 homework assignments, 15 points each, so that's 45%. Final project proposals, 5%, 5 points. And then the final project, 20 points each, 40 points total. Okay. Here's the grading for grades, all pretty standard. So a note on deadlines, life be cray, as I say here. So basically, don't worry about deadlines for anything except the final project, okay? But I say don't worry about them, and that's kind of true and not true, okay? I would say unless you have extenuating circumstances, do worry about them, okay? Try to get them in on time. What I mean by this, though, is that there are a lot of life things that come up now, right? If you want to turn in any of the homework stuff late, you can turn all 3 homework assignments in week 10, and I will still give you credit for them, okay? I don't care. The problem is if we get to the end of the term and you have, say, 2 homework assignments and the final project left to do, that's not going to be a very fun time, right? So, so try as much as you can to keep up with the deadlines. I will, like I said, be covering the homeworks in class after they're due. So if you haven't completed it, I would ask that you just not attend class for that amount of time. But do worry about the final project deadline, right? Because that one can't move. So proposal should be in at that time, and then the final project itself is due, you know, week 11. So yeah, but in terms of the homeworks, there's 3 homeworks. You can turn them in whenever you want. Ideally, you would let me know if you're not going to turn it in on time, but I don't really even care about that too much. All right. So, oh yeah, I think I might have that twice. Okay, my slides got a little out of order. So the communication piece is just like whatever's going on. I don't need to know I don't need to know anything that's going on in your life that you don't feel comfortable sharing with me. Okay, that I want to make that super clear. But if you need more time, you need any accommodation, anything, if you feel yourself falling behind and you need extra help, let me know. Okay, what I'm really hoping for here is just active communication from you all. What do you need in this class? What can I do to help make this a better process for you and help your learning? Okay, so please do try to stay in active communication as much as possible. Okay, few final notes. This is the first time I've taught this course, which means it makes me a little bit nervous. I don't have a great feel at all for how long things will take. I might have way too many slides sometimes. That tends to usually be where I'm at. You know, we'll just see how it goes. But basically, I'm asking you to please be a little bit patient with me as I try to figure this out too. I do plan on this class being highly applied. Okay, so there's going to be lots of, we're going to talk about something, and then there's going to be 5 minutes for you to try to do it. And then we'll talk about something, and then it'll be 1 minute for you to do something, and then 3 minutes for you to do something. Okay, so we'll use timers a lot throughout. But part of why I say I don't have a good feel for how long things will take is I don't want to end up in a situation where, you know, we're like weeks behind where I expected us to be. So, so we may switch up the actual topics that are covered later, depending on how timing is going. This is pretty much how I'm expecting it'll go. But, you know, if we need to move things around a little bit, please be a little patient with me on that. My basic approach for this class too is maybe a little different than I would maybe think it would be if I were a student coming into this class. The first half of the quarter, there probably won't be a lot of stuff that is totally brand new to you, okay? We're gonna focus on moving to R instead of using the HLM software and SPSS and whatnot. But then the focus is really going to be deepening your current understanding, okay? So we're gonna be digging into the models a little bit deeper than you maybe have in the past. From there, we will start to then learn more new stuff, okay? So this was supposed to be down here, but this is a change I made right before class. So for many of you, there probably won't be a lot of stuff that is totally brand new for the first couple of weeks, okay? But I hope that you'll be interacting with it in ways that you haven't before, and that will deepen your understanding of what's going on with these models. So new stuff will come, but we're going to start out by focusing on depth of understanding instead of covering a bunch of topics. The other thing is I will try as much as I can to differentiate my instruction, but it's going to be tough, so I'll do my best. But I know, because I know many of you, that there's a big range in terms of comfort level with R, comfort level with multi-level models, comfort level with statistics generally. So there's going to be times for some of you where it feels super, super slow, and other times where it might feel super, super fast. So please do give me that feedback if you're feeling that way so I can know. Sometimes it will be hard to adjust that, because if I get the same feedback one week from one person that it's going too fast, at the same time I'm getting feedback that it's going too slow, then that probably means I'm somewhere in the middle, right? But if I get feedback from more than one person that's saying it's going too fast or that it's going too slow, then I know I need to adjust my pacing, okay? I think pacing for this class is probably the thing that's giving me the most nerves, because I just don't know how long things are going to take, okay? So last thing, and this is very relevant for right now, because we're going to do it right now. This is a long class, so each time I will try to give you like just a 5-minute break. It's not like a big break, but it gives you a chance to stand up, stretch, go to the bathroom, get a drink of water, whatever you want to do, okay? So we're going to take a 5-minute break each class, hopefully. So we're going to do that now. But before we do that, are there any questions on any of that? That's the class, right? So after this, when we get back from the break, I'll tell you sort of my assumptions about where you're at, and then we'll start to jump into R a little bit. So my assumptions about you. This is a little bit awkward way of saying this, but I sort of have to assume some things about you as I create the content, right? So this is a couple of slides just basically saying what I assume that you are comfortable with and whatever. And specifically, I'm doing this so that you can let me know if some of these assumptions are wrong, all right? So I assume you have a strong foundational knowledge of multiple regression, right? So you should be able to interpret like a two-way interaction without much trouble, okay? That you understand the basics of multi-level modeling and how multi-level modeling extends the basic multiple regression model. I don't think any of this is too out there. Can correctly interpret 2- and 3-level models and have at least a basic of an understanding of how multi-level models can be used to estimate change over time, okay? And we'll talk more about this as well. So if that part is not totally clear to you, that's fine, because we will definitely talk about that more, okay? So that's all the stuff related to multi-level modeling. And now what I'd like to do for the next 7 minutes is I'm going to split you into groups. Let's see, we have roughly 20 people, I think. So I'll split you into groups of, say, 5-ish, and just go through these questions, okay, and talk about them as a group, and then we'll talk about them together when we come back, all right? So when is multi-level modeling preferred? Is it always better than multiple regression? What does it mean for something to be nested? And can multi-level modeling be used if it's not nested? And then describe the differences between multiple regression and a model with random intercepts, random slopes, and random intercepts and slopes. And why does multi-level modeling allow you to investigate change over time? What specifically makes it different, okay, than like a multiple regression model? Okay, any questions? Okay, welcome back. So I tried to get to all your rooms. I think I missed one or two of you, but discussion sounded good. I think it sounded like most people got through them all or close to it. So let's just go through them quickly together. When is multi-level modeling preferred? Is it always better than multiple regression? And some of this is like a little bit opinion based, so I'll tell you my opinion and why. Who wants to give that a go?
I just avoid terminology like always. So that was a trigger for me. Like nothing's always. So that was my little, you know, the simplest model sometimes is the best. And if you have all the assumptions of data are met in your, you know, in your model, then the simplest model is sometimes best.
Good, perfect. I agree totally. I will say though, that I do believe multi-level modeling should be the default. So that should be what you start out with. And then you can evaluate it from there. And if you want to, if a simpler model is preferred, and what I mean by that is compared to multiple regression, right? So if you're doing a standard single level regression model, I would actually advocate for multi-level modeling as the default. That's what you're sort of starting out with. And the reason is because very regularly there are higher level structures that are influencing things, and people even in, you know, depends on what your sample size is like and whatever, but even if you're looking at like people across different states or whatever, it's a good way to, even though those people might be really spread out within a state, they probably have more in common than people within a state probably have more in common than people between states. And that variance component might be very small. And if it's small enough, it might be worth dropping, right? But I do think multi-level modeling is worth thinking about as your default model when you're doing regression modeling, okay? What does it mean for something to be nested, and can multi-level modeling be used if the data are not nested? Who wants to give that one a go?
I think I can give it a try. So the nested meaning like there is some clustering in the data set. For example, like students are from multiple classes, but student within the class may behave similar way than another. And for the second part, I think it's related to what Brock said. If the data is not nested, I think it's kind of hard to decompose. So maybe it's like always or not question. We might think about the data structure.
Good. Yeah, so the nesting is exactly as you said. You might have students in a classroom, and those students are all instructed by the same teacher. So therefore, if you're looking at something like, you know, social emotional stuff or achievement things, those are probably influenced by the teacher. And so therefore, students within one classroom are probably more similar than students between classrooms, right? And, you know, again, the size of that variance component might change depending on how much students within a classroom really are more similar than students between classrooms. The second part is tricky because this is where the heuristic of multi-level modeling actually becomes limiting, okay? Multi-level modeling can be used if the data are not nested. Those are called cross-classified models. And actually, so like a very common example is like item response data. So item response theory, you have like an item, a response to an item. The student responded correctly or incorrectly. So it's 0, 1, right? Those responses are nested within the student, right, who provided them. But those responses are also nested within items, right? And so it's not like the responses are nested within the items, which are nested within the student, right? They're not really, you could also say, right, the other way. So you can think about it as two variance components where they're not, the nesting is not pure, but you can still estimate the variance for each of those random effects separately. Okay. Another example, which I gave in a different group, is like if you have data on teachers, right? And those teachers are all nested in schools. So maybe you want to account for that school level nesting, but then you have those teachers being rated by somebody at the district level, and they're rating teachers across schools, right? So those raters are not nested in schools, but the teachers are, okay? That's more of like a partially nested model, but you can still estimate the variance components for schools and for raters. And you probably want to do that because some raters might be really harsh and others might be really lenient, right? Those types of models are definitely quite complicated. We'll talk about them a little bit sort of near the end of the course, but that's more of a, if you're interested in those types of models, please let me know and we'll talk about them more. One other last really quick example is if you have a student, you have longitudinal data for a student, right? Those multiple time points are nested within the student. But then if you're trying to account for higher levels of nesting, the student changes teachers or changes classrooms every single year, right? So the data are nested within the student, but the student isn't nested in a teacher. They're sort of nested in multiple teachers. And so you have this like sort of multi-membership model that can occur too. Okay, so those are all super complicated and it's not easy, but your data don't necessarily have to be purely nested to use this sort of modeling framework. Okay. All right. Describe the differences between multiple regression. So let's just say even simple linear regression and a model with random intercepts. What's the difference there?
I can try.
Mm-hmm.
So in the simple or multiple regression, you have only one intercept.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, fixed intercept.
Yep. So in a simple linear regression, you would have one line, right? This is your regression line, right? In a random intercepts model, you would just allow that line to move up and down. So maybe you have, say, the relationship between free and reduced lunch status and some test score, right? And you might have a slope, like let's just say, assume that or let's say, call it SES, right? Let's assume that that's actually a continuous predictor. You would have a slope in simple linear regression for everybody. And in a random intercepts model, you might allow the level of that slope to change across schools or across classrooms or whatever. So it's still the same slope, but that slope is moving up or down. So just the intercept is changing. And if you look at all of them at once, you would see a bunch of parallel slopes, right? All right, what about a random slopes model? And note that this is random slopes, not random intercepts and slopes.
So for the random slopes, you not only just have one, line. The trajectory of the line can be different across individuals.
Correct. So if it's just random slopes, though, then everybody has the same intercept. Everybody starts at the same place, and then from there, the slope of the line changes. Okay, so that's random slopes, and then random intercepts and slopes is just the combination of both of them, right? It can vary up and down, and the actual slope itself. You like all my hand movements? It's a good. It's my fill-in when I don't actually have a whiteboard behind me that I can write on. All right, and then why does multi-level modeling allow you to investigate changes over time? What specifically makes it different? And I should have said from standard single-level regression. And I'm looking for like a plain English version of this.
I guess I can try. In multi-level modeling, you're looking at time measurements within individuals. So you're able to kind of look at the trajectories of individuals and calculate growth based on that, or changes over time based on that. And in other regression, you're, I think, looking more at cross sections across time. And so that gives you, something different.
Yeah, so you could actually still structure the data so that you have the time nested within the student, But the problem is with single level regression is you would still end up with one line. So you would be making the assumption that every participant in your sample starts at the same place and every participant makes the same growth over time, right? And those are really strict assumptions and unlikely to be met in the vast majority of cases, right? Whereas multi-level modeling allows you to estimate those things as random. So every participant has their own starting point and every participant has their own rate of growth, right? So some might be really steep and start really high. Others might be really shallow and start low. Others might be really steep but start low, right? And that's fine. Multi-level modeling can handle all of that because it allows everybody, it allows these random effects, right, for the intercept and the slope. So basically, you can fit a bunch of regressions instead of just one. Okay. Uh-oh, there we go. All right, here's a very complicated looking model. It's actually not that bad though, okay? And so I'm gonna give you 5 minutes again. And what I would like you to do in breakout groups this time is try to just look at this model and try to parse it into plain English. Okay, what is this model?
You're not sharing your screen, DA.
Oh, oops. Well, that might help. Huh? This one. Okay, so we were here, and then it's just 1, 2 over. Okay, that one. So this looks like a super complicated model. What I would like you to do, though, is just try to parse this in plain English. So here we have index ijk, right? And those are going to index time points, people, and then schools. Okay, FRL means free or reduced lunch, and week is like what week it is, right? And then size is like the size of the school. Okay, so basically, this is using the Raudenbusch notation, right? And I would like you to work in groups for 5 minutes and try to parse this in plain English as much as you can. Make sense? So this was hopefully not like panic inducing, but it was obviously quite difficult, and that's fine. So I'll walk through this really quick and then we'll go through the actual slides that talk about it too, okay? But basically what we have here is this is level 1, right? This is level 1 here. This is level 2, and then this is level 3. Okay, so we have some intercept that varies by students and schools. We have a week variable, so this is growth. So basically, we're fitting a growth model where the coefficient is going to be interpreted in weeks. So students made X amount of growth per week, right? And then this pi 0 JK comes down here, as does pi 1 JK, right? Both of them drop down, and then each of those get their own equations. So this part is just the intercept for that level, which is just the fixed effect, okay? And then this part ends up being now a cross-level interaction. So what we're saying here is that students' intercept, where they start, is predicted by whether they have whether they were eligible for free or reduced lunch or not. Similarly, their growth is also predicted by the same thing. So both of these coefficients we're saying are predicted by free or reduced lunch status. We also have this R0 and R1 terms, which are saying that that intercept varies between students here, and the slope varies between students, which is here, okay? If those parts were not there, like let's say we had R0 but not R1, then we would have a random intercept model where we would have parallel slopes, okay? If we had R1 but not R0, we would be assuming everybody starts at the same place, but they make different growth, okay? Then we have basically the same thing repeated at the school level, but now we take each of these betas and give each of them their own equations, right? These always start then with their own intercept for that equation. And then we're saying, okay, so the intercept, okay, B00, you just kind of have to walk them back like this, at least that's how I do it. B00 is here, which is pi 0, which is there, right? So this is the intercept. This is the equation for the intercept, basically. We're saying is also predicted by the size of the school. And the intercept where students start randomly varies across schools, okay? Similarly, we're saying the slope, students' slope, is predicted by the size of the school. So that where they start and the rate that they grow is predicted both by their own individual free and reduced lunch status and also the size of the school, okay? The more complicated one is this B10 term. No, that one's not that complicated, sorry, that's here. But it is a little bit more complicated because we're saying, okay, B10 is here, which is pi10, which is there, okay? So now we're saying that, wait a minute, B10. B01. Oh, okay, so sorry, I did that backwards. B10 is just the effect of the size on the growth. B01 is the one that's a little more complicated, okay? So it's here, and that is also here, okay? So what we're saying is that the size of the school predicts the effect of FRL status on the intercept, okay? And so this is a cross-level interaction. And another way of thinking of this is the relation between FRL and where students start is moderated by the school size, okay? And then finally, this B11 is here. So we could say the same thing, that the rate, the relation between their FRL status and the rate at which they grow is moderated by the school size, but we decided not to do that, and that's actually also not a random effect. So this, this term here is the random intercept, so we're allowing students' intercept to vary between schools. U01 is U01, so here we're saying the effect of FRL on students' initial achievement varies between schools. And finally, the students' slopes vary between schools as well. Okay, questions on that? Okay, it's easier when somebody else is going through it, right? Okay, so I'm going to just reiterate what I said. The model that we just saw estimates a relation between time and students' math scores in weekly units. And notice I've gone with the gamma here because that's the actual fixed effect at the end. So each week students gained on average X math points or whatever it is. Or I guess it is math, right? Yeah, math. It also estimates a relation between FRL eligibility and students' initial math scores and their weekly rate of growth. Okay, so FRL eligibility is predicting both their initial status and their weekly rate of growth. The relation between school size and students' initial math achievement, rate of growth, and the school size relation with student FRL eligibility on initial achievement, okay? So that's a really complicated one, but you can theoretically think of reasons why that might be the case, and one of the reasons that multi-level modeling is so powerful is because it allows you to estimate these really complex relations like that, okay? It also estimates between student variability in initial math scores and between student variability in rate of growth, as well as the covariance between those two things. Okay, and that's not shown very well in that equation, but it is true. If we go back here, we are estimating this variance here, we're estimating this variance here, but we're also estimating the covariance between them. Okay, and that's not shown here very well, but that is happening. Similarly, we're estimating this variance, this variance, this variance, and the covariances among them. Okay. So we're also estimating between school variability in math scores, between school variability in the rate of growth, and between school variability in the relation between students' FRL eligibility and their initial achievement, as well as all the covariances. Okay? So that may not feel like super comfortable, like you may not feel like you can repeat what I just said, and that's okay. You may feel like you can repeat what I just said pretty accurately and feel totally comfortable with it, and that's fine too,
All right, either way is good. All right, so back to assumptions. Now I'm going to talk about my assumptions related to R. Okay, this is not a course on R, but we are going to be using it a lot. And I am not going to really be instructing you on how to use R. Okay, we will have times where I will show you how to do things that are not related to multi-level modeling that are related to R, because they're like sort of tangentially related. So next week, for example, we will talk about restructuring data from more of a wide format to more of a long format so that you can then use multi-level modeling with LME4. But I'm not going to teach you how to install packages or load data. I mean, a lot of that is fairly straightforward, and I can help you with that if you need it, but I'm not going to be lecturing about it. Okay, so basically, if you need extra support, then you'll need to contact me for out of class time. Okay. So I assume you have a basic understanding of the R package ecosystem, how to install, load them, whatever, that you can read flat files into R, and that you know and use RStudio projects and the here package. Okay, so this is sort of an assumption that is maybe a little bit stronger than an assumption because it's also a recommendation. So you might feel comfortable with these parts, but maybe you don't use here or RStudio projects. Okay, that's fine. It'll take you maybe, 20 minutes to get comfortable with them. So go and read the documentation on those. If not, and if you need help, again, contact me. But I'm asking that you please do use RStudio projects and that you use the here package because it helps with reproducibility a lot. Okay, this is a blog post by Jenny Bryan that explains why this is so important. Okay. I also assume that you can perform basic data wrangling and transformations in R using the tidyverse. So this is not, I'm not expecting that you're a wizard, but that you can at least, generally get the data in the format that you want it to be in. And that you can use R Markdown to create at least basic reproducible and dynamic documents. Okay? Is anything in there feel unreasonable to people? Or any questions you have about that? Okay, so let's go to R. Go ahead and launch RStudio and install any of these packages that you don't have below if you haven't already. You don't have to, I wouldn't actually do this right now for this one anyway, because that one kind of takes a little bit of time. The other thing is, when you do that one specifically, it's going to ask you if you want to install some packages from source. I would recommend pretty much always saying no, that it's not worth it. And that's where you will run it into errors often. Okay, so you can run this code to install these things and then say no if it asks you to compile from source. If it asks you to update some packages, you can say yes to that. You can say, yeah, update all these packages, whatever. Okay. And then once you've done that, I would like you, so one of them that I'm asking you to install is my own package, one of my own packages. It's called Equasiomatic, all right? And I'll show you more about what it does later, or you could Google it and figure it out. But part of it is that it has some data sets in it that we will be using, okay? So once you have that, go ahead and load Equasiomatic and then look at the HSB data set, which is, I'm sure you're all probably sick to death of, but it's the first day. Okay, and then once you get all of that done, give me a thumbs up emoji, please. And we're not going to get through all the slides today for sure, because we only have 15 more minutes, but. Okay, we'll just go like 30 more seconds here.
Okay, so if you haven't gotten this far yet, then hopefully you can catch up as we go along. Okay, so you got equation-o-matic loaded. Look at HSB dataset, looks like that. So I'm assuming you're familiar with this, perhaps painfully so. We're gonna just do some basic stuff, okay? So let's load the tidyverse and then compute mean math scores by school, okay? So then also we're gonna compute the standard error of the mean, which is the standard deviation divided by the square root of n, okay? So this is how we're gonna do this, okay? And again, this is like a new thing I have, but you can actually just click copy code there and it will copy it. But this is the way I would do it, right? We load the tidyverse, and I'll let you do this as I kind of explain the code. And I'm going to say HSB is my data set. I'm going to pipe that to group by. I'm going to group by school ID, right? Because I'm going to compute means by school for every school. And then I'm going to summarize. And in that summarizing, I'm going to create two new columns, okay? One's called school mean, one's called school mean standard error, right? The school mean is just going to be equal to the mean of the math scores. And I'm going to say na.rm equals true because I want to remove missing data, okay? And then for the standard error, I'm going to compute the standard deviation of the math scores. And then I'm going to divide that by the square root of n. And notice I have n here as just this little function. That's a dplyr function to say how many rows are there in this grouping level. Okay, so you can just use that directly, and then you should get something that looks like this. Okay, questions on that? Is there parts of that that seem confusing? Okay, go ahead and give me a thumbs up emoji again when you've gotten this part done. Okay, good. That is most everybody. Okay, now I would like you, as just like another sort of little pop quiz thing, 2 minutes, try to plot the means by school. Okay, so, oh shoot. Well, my timer is over my plot. So you might have done something that looked like what is below this plot, which is not particularly helpful. So we go ggplot, school means is our our object, right, that we just created. And I put school mean on the x-axis and school ID on the y-axis. And then I say plus G on point. And what you get is just basically a scatter of points, even though you can't really see it. And that's not super helpful. So how can we make this more helpful? Well, one way we can do this is by actually reordering the schools according to their mean. Okay, so we're going to make school ID a factor, and then we're going to reorder school ID according to the school mean. Okay, and you can do this if you want. If not, that's fine too. That ends up with something that looks like this. And you know, the school ID on the y-axis is still messed up and whatever. We can make this a lot prettier, but this is immediately much more helpful, right, than the previous one, because now we get we get basically a rank ordering of the schools, and we can see kind of how different they are in their means. Even better, though, we can do this same thing, but now add geom error bar h to get horizontal error bars. And I'm saying the min is the school mean minus 1.96 times the school mean standard error. And then the max is school mean plus 1.96 times the school mean standard error. And that gives us basically a 95% confidence interval for the school mean, right? And then we get something that looks like this. Okay, does that make sense? And finally, we might want to annotate this a little bit more to add a vertical line for the overall mean. Okay, so then I'm saying just plus geom v line, where the x-intercept is equal to the mean of math scores, removing missing data. Color is equal to this color, whatever. And then the size is 2, so it's a little bit bigger. And we end up with something that looks like that. Okay, so why would we do this? Okay, we can make that plot a lot prettier still. There's plenty of stuff that we could do there, but that's not really the point. That's not why we're doing this. This is more like exploratory stuff. So what do you think? Looking at that plot that we just created, do you think there's school level variation in math scores?
Would it be where the error bars don't overlap?
Yeah, well, that, if they're not overlapping the mean, then yeah, they're probably significantly different. But I just mean in terms of the overall picture, does it look like there is significant variation in school means, like where these points are relative to their standard errors? I would say yes. I think it looks like there's quite a bit of variation there, right? So we can model it, okay? So now we're gonna fit a basic model, and we might even be able to get through these slides. We got 7 more minutes. So we're going to load LME4, install that if you haven't already. And then we're going to fit a model that is equivalent to what we just did descriptively. Okay, so what would that look like more conceptually than with code? What would a model look like that replicates what we just did? Any ideas? Okay, I'll tell you. Basically, what we did there was we fit a mean for every school, right? That's the exact same thing as if we fit an unconditional model where we fit an intercept and we allow that intercept to vary by school, okay? Every school is going to get its own estimated mean. The intercept is going to represent the overall mean, and then the random effects are basically the deviation from that overall mean. Okay, that means though that the prediction, the model would predict for one student whatever the school mean is. Okay, so every student in a school is going to get the same estimated score because all we have in the model is a mean and school level variance in that mean. Okay, so in LME4, so with the Gelman-Hill notation, it looks like that. I'm going to just totally skip over that for now because I want to get to the code. In LME4, we would estimate this model like this. Okay, so we first load LME4, which we already did, right? And then we're going to create an object, a model object, which we can call whatever. I tend to call my unconditional models M0.
So that's just one of my conventions. And then we say Elmer, linear mixed effects regression. That's what it stands for, right? And then we're going to have math, our outcome, predicted by 1, which means an intercept. And then we're going to say plus, and then we have parentheses here to define the random effects, okay? And so the grouping factor for the random effect goes on the right side, and then what we want to vary by that grouping factor goes on the left side, and we have a pipe that separates them, okay? So this says we have math as our outcome. It's predicted by an intercept plus intercept variation across schools. Okay, so each school, the intercept is going to vary by school, and each school is going to get its own intercept using the HSB data. Okay, so I probably should have said data equals HSB, but data is the next argument after the formula. So if you put the arguments in the same order as it expects them, you don't have to name them, but I probably should have because that would be more explicit. So go ahead and try to fit that. Once you're done, you can call summary on that object to learn more about it. Okay, so if we call summary on M0, yeah, first of all, if you're used to HLM, the HLM software, the speed with which this fits will be incredible to you, or at least it was to me. I had models that were taking 45 minutes in HLM and they took 20 seconds in LME4. So we call summary on that model object and we get more information, okay? So in this case, we only have one fixed effect, which is the intercept, okay? So this is saying basically, on average, students scored 12.637 points on their math assessment, okay? And then that average varied between schools with a standard deviation of 2.94, okay? And notice I'm saying in standard deviation units, not variances, because standard deviations are much more interpretable, right? That's essentially all the model is. And then we're saying our model was off by, on average, 6.3 points, or the variance of it was 6.3 standard deviations, okay? That's essentially all we're looking at here because this model is so simple. We will get more information that we'll talk about more later. This is what it looks like in equation form, but again, I'm not going to talk about that so much right now. Okay, we had means that we estimated descriptively, right? Now I'm going to pull those same school means, but I'm going to pull them from our model, okay? And this last bit, we only have 2 minutes, so I'm just going to kind of go through it. You can follow along if you want, but don't feel like you have to, or don't rush so much to try to keep up if you're not, all right? So I'm pulling the coefficients from model 0 for school ID, okay? All that's doing is basically saying this is the predicted mean for the school. We look at the head of estimated means. The row names of this object are the school ID, and then the intercept is, the school level variation in those means. So we can merge this with our original data set. We take our estimated means. I'm saying mutate where school ID is equal to as.integer row names. So basically I'm creating a school ID column in my data set that is the row names. And then I'm renaming intercept from intercept, okay? And then we just left join school means with our estimated means, and we end up with this. So here's our school ID. Here's our descriptively estimated school mean and our standard error. And here's our intercept from our model, okay? And you can see they're not always the same. What I'm going to do next is plot these together. And I won't walk through the code too much, but it's basically, this is the same part as before. I'm reordering the school ID, and then I just have 2 layers of points. One where I'm plotting the actual school mean, and then the second layer where I'm redefining the x-axis, so it's the intercept, okay? And I'm changing the color. Put the V line on there again, and we get something that looks like this. So what I want you to notice here is that in every case, right, these pink points represent the model estimated intercepts, and blue are the descriptive. So in every case, those intercepts are being pulled towards the mean, okay? And if you look closely, you will see that the further out those points are from the grand mean, the more they get pulled towards the grand mean, okay? Sample size is also related here. If we have a very small sample in a given school, it will be pulled closer to the grand mean than a school that has a whole bunch of people, okay? This is what's known as partial pooling, or I believe in HLM1, Joe talked about it in terms of empirical Bayes. But partial pooling is more how I would describe it. Okay, very last thing, we can estimate the ICC of this model using the performance package, which is part of that easy stats thing I told you to install at the start. So we just say library performance, ICC M0.18. So we can see in this unconditional model, about 18% of the total variability in math scores lies between schools, okay? So that's it for today. And we actually did almost perfect on time, maybe just had to go a little bit fast there at the end. So that's encouraging for me. Next time we will talk about data structuring, so moving from a wider format to a longer format, and we will talk about more models. So we'll talk about random intercepts, random slopes, and I don't think we'll actually get to multiple levels. We'll still probably just be at 2 levels, but we'll do that the following week. Homework 1 is assigned next week. So hopefully we will have at least some time, hopefully at least like 30 minutes to work on it in class, like during class time. And that way, as you start to get set up on it and work on it, and like ideally come to class set up, ready to go, working on homework 1. But that way, as you're starting to work on it, I can be there and answer questions for you as you get going on it, okay? We're 1 minute over, but any last minute questions or anything anybody wants to check in on?
Yeah, for the participation this week, do you just want us to upload the like R Markdown, or what would you like?
Yes. Yeah, whatever you were using just now through that section where we were, you know, calculating the school means and all that, just upload that script. And I'm gonna just glance at it basically, just to make sure it's there. It's that's it. Okay. Any other questions? Okay, thank you all. Looking forward to this term. I hope it's a good one. I think it will be.